Good morning and good afternoon. I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to talk at the annual CDDF conference. Of course, it's a real shame that we can't be together to be able to share some presentations and some discussion, but it is a great pleasure for me to present on a topic called the Innovative Licensing and Access Pathway. And this is a new streamlined approach to both regulation and patient access. So the first slide really is a very important slide, actually, because it highlights one of the real key components to the ILAP, which is partnership working. Much stronger working between the Medicines and Healthcare Product Regulatory Agency, which is the UK Medicines Authority, and with the HTA bodies in Great Britain, the All Wales Therapeutic and Toxicology Centre, the AWTTC, NICE, the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, and the Scottish Medicines Consortium. So this is a real key component in terms of thinking about how the ILAP might bring medicines to patients more rapidly than is normally appreciated. So what is the ILAP? So the ILAP ambition is to deliver safe, early, and financially sustainable patient access to innovative medicines. And as I mentioned, the real key component is this strengthening partnership between the MHRA, the medicines regulator, and three UK HTA bodies, NICE, SMC, and AWTTCC. Importantly is patient input. And hopefully throughout the presentation, I'll highlight areas where we are trying to embed the patient input right from the beginning of the pathway all the way through to patient access, ensuring that those products that are developed for patients really have taken into consideration the views of patients as the end user. What we're trying to achieve also with the ILAP is greater alignment in terms of the evaluation and the access activities throughout the whole pathway, with a much more integrated approach to regulation and HTA. It's not only the partners within the partnership, but also we are working much more strongly with the NHS, National Health Service in England and Scotland, for example, but also other really important players in the life sciences ecosystem, such as our Accelerated Access Collaborative, other UK healthcare system partners. So now I'll move on to describe the key components to the pathway. The first part of the pathway, which I'll come on to describe in more detail, is called the Innovation Passport. This is a new medicines designation. It complements another medicines designation that we have called the Promising Innovative Medicines designation of our Early Access to Medicine scheme. But this Innovation Passport designation links to a portfolio of activities around the creation of a roadmap to patient access. This roadmap is called the TDP, the Target Development Profile. And this creates a unique UK roadmap utilizing tools from a toolkit to provide a platform for sustained multi-stakeholder collaboration. These tools are really important. So these tools are there to drive efficiencies, to build on the collaboration between the partners and the sponsors, and to support evidence generation and evidence requirements that are going to be suitable for both the medicines regulator, but also the HTA body. And the idea behind the ILAP is to try and pull together in a much more integrated approach this pathway, bringing in expertise from the different partners in the wider healthcare system, including the NHS, to really serve patients going forward for those innovative products in a way that they can be accessed as quickly as possible. So a little bit more about the Innovation Passport designation. This is the gateway, if you like, to the ILAP, and it enables access to the pathway and those future important activities in terms of streamlining the development and the access pathway through the TDP. There's built-in flexibility with multiple entry points along the pathway. Importantly, a sponsor can apply with non-clinical data, so they can come very early before their first in human studies, or they can come when they already have some clinical trial evidence. And the ILAP is open to both commercial and non-commercial sponsors. We've created a broad and inclusive definition of innovation in order to capture a wide range of products. And this does include drug repurposing. So this is particularly important for those non-commercial sponsors who are in this space. The non-clinical entry point, so before that clinical data, before those first-in-human studies, provides for the long-term ambition for these much more integrated interactions. And we want to think about the patient right from the start. So as I'll come on to the criteria of the Innovation Passport, you can see that that's really a true focus of the Innovation Passport. But what the designation does right at the very beginning, by having this unique opportunity for the MHRA HTA bodies to have these discussions around whether a passport should be issued or not, really provides right from the beginning a real platform for that multi-stakeholder dialogue. And it is, I think, a really clear example where there is joint decision-making between the MHRA, the Medicines and Healthcare Product Regulatory Agency, and the HTA bodies, but also with patient input. So the decision around whether a passport should be given or not is not only made by the organizations, but also includes, from the summer of last year, patients from our patient and public reference group. And this is a really important point. There are 3 criteria for the Innovation Passport, and I'll now come on to describe them in more detail. The first criteria is that there needs to be a condition that's life-threatening or seriously debilitating, or there is a significant patient or public health need. The second criteria describes what type of medicine is it. Is it perhaps a truly innovative medicine, such as an advanced therapy medicinal product, an ATMP? We've seen a number of exciting developments in the oncology field in this space. Could it be a clinically significant new indication? And here we're perhaps thinking about repurposed medicines. So we know that repurposed development is a really innovative part of drug development. And we are seeing a number of older products being repurposed in oncology field. Perhaps the medicine has been developed in a rare disease or other special populations, such as in the elderly or in the pediatric population. Or perhaps the medicine is being developed in line with objectives for public health priorities. The final criteria, and perhaps the most important criteria, is that the medicine needs to demonstrate potential benefit to patients. And this could be either through improved efficacy or safety, so the activity of the product, or a contribution to patient care or quality of life as compared to alternative therapeutic options. So what has the activity in the ILAP been to date in terms of the, in terms of the Innovation Passport activity? So in the first year of operation, so ILAP was launched in the 2021, January 21, there were 76 applications for the Innovation Passport. As you might expect, and this reflects actually the drug development pipeline, oncology was a major contribution of applications, and you can see that there were 25 applications. The next common area in therapeutic area was neurology with 13 applications, and then respiratory. But actually we did see quite a really nice spread amongst different therapeutic areas. And to date, we have granted 44 Innovation Passports, 23 were pending, 8 were refused, and 1 was withdrawn. Importantly, we're seeing interest from a variety of size companies, so the larger pharma, but also the small companies. And in fact, we've seen an application from a small UK university. And more recently, we have actually given an Innovation Passport designation to a not-for-profit research organization. And that's a really pleasing development, which shows that the ILAP is attractive to all of those that are in the innovative medicines development space. The ILAP also does include products that are going to go through the FDA Orbis pathway. This is a pathway run through the FDA, but also includes work sharing with other countries such as Brazil, Australia, Health Canada, Swissmedic, Singapore Authority. And here we've seen 11 applications express a specific interest in this oncology pathway. And there is a good mix of both rare and common diseases. And in fact, our first Innovation Passport, and you can see in the right side of the panel, the press release for this passport was actually approved in a rare condition von Lippel-Lindau disease back in February of 2021. Oops, sorry. So just a little bit more detail around what type of applications we've seen and what stage of development we've seen. And this is clearly of interest because what we want to do is to create really long-term interactions around the trajectory of a product and its development. So as you can see here in the graph, a good proportion of products were coming in the early or mid stage. So the early stage is defined before the first in human study. So that means the innovation passport was based on data from a non-clinical model before clinical data were available. The mid stage, where you can see there were 23 applications, this is before confirmatory studies. And then you can see in the final two bars where the applications have come in more mature setting. But this does mean that there's less input that the partners can perhaps achieve in terms of using the tools of the toolkit. But I do still think that this is an important interaction around discussing perhaps the route to marketing authorizations, thinking about some of the innovative ways that you might consider managed access pathways. But anyway, what we're hoping to see in the future as the ILAP beds in, that we see a shift of the products that we're seeing, the products move much more earlier. So actually we see the bulk of the products coming in the early to mid stage so that we can have these long-term discussions. Now I'll move on to the TDP. So the Innovation Passport designation is the link to this portfolio of interactions around the creation of the TDP roadmap. As you can see on the bubbles in the left and right hand side of the panel, that there are a number of specific topics or areas that we're really interested to discuss, such as special populations. So this may be women's health, rare diseases, comorbidities. What's the development to date? So what's the approach to the evidence generation? Are there novel approaches that we really need to consider? Perhaps there's a surrogate biomarker that needs to be investigated. What are the challenges in that development program? How can we really streamline and think about really driving those efficiencies in the development program? We know that scientific advice is really important for drug development, so really highlighting the importance of that scientific advice, and particularly that joint scientific advice between the medicines regulator and the HTA body. A dedicated section on patient engagement, so ensuring that the patient voice is embedded, trying to understand what patient engagement the company has already conducted, what patient engagement the company is planning to conduct, but also what patient-reported outcome measures have been included within the development program. What's the strategy for pro-measures to support that understanding of how the medicine affects the patient? Product development to date, so really understanding better where the product is in the life cycle, and then understanding whether that product has got multiple indications. So it's not just about a single indication, but a discussion really about that whole approach to that medicine development, whether we can extrapolate data from a previous application to a future application. So really trying to have a much more holistic approach to the discussions that we have, as opposed to the targeted scientific advice that often can be quite narrow. So the TDP, when it's complete, will define the key regulatory and development features for that product, and really identify or try to identify what might be those pitfalls and challenges, and create a roadmap to deliver early patient access, really with the ambition to try to create a product that is as regulatory and access ready as possible to ensure that streamlined approach to patient access. I've mentioned the tools of the toolkit, and this is some of the tools that we have either in development or are readily available. And as you can see, they cross a number of different areas of a clinical development program. So for example, we have novel clinical trial methodology, really important for those companies or sponsors that are considering perhaps basket studies or platform studies or other different types of ways to collect data, particularly surrogate markers or using biomarkers. We have mechanisms to support clinical trial recruitment and a rapid clinical trial dossier pre-assessment service. We also consider center accreditation and adaptive inspections from our inspections colleagues, such as for GMP and GCP. We have flexible licensing routes, so you can see in the middle of the panel with rolling review, accelerated timetables, day 150, using the international options such as FDA Orbis and the Access Consortium. And we also have in the bottom left of the panel, you can see we're called the UK HTA Access Forum tool. And this is a new tool being developed by our HTA colleagues, NICE, the SMC and the AWTTC. And this is a specific access tool really for the HTA bodies to co-discuss with the sponsor about the route to access. And this tool will be launched later in February. So as you can see, this toolkit is currently quite diverse, but over time, we're hoping to add to this toolkit and create more tools as we gain more experience in the ILAP, understanding better what parts of the development program really need assistance and where we can add value into the system to support those innovators. So now my final few concluding slides, just to sum up in terms of what this might mean for individual stakeholders. So most importantly for the ILAP is really the focus on the patients, their families and carers. What does the ILAP mean for them? So earlier last year, we set up a dedicated ILAP patient and public reference group, and this is really to start to drive a much clearer end-to-end approach in terms of embedding the patient voice in the drug development pathway. What we want to achieve to ILAP, which is obviously, of course, very relevant to patients, is safe and timely access to innovative medicines addressing those patients' needs. We want to create a system where patients are at the front and the center, and we've started to do this by ensuring that the innovation passport designation discussions include the patient voice. So whether we grant a designation or not, we'll have the patient there. But we have a specific tool on patient engagement through the toolkit, and we want to develop more approaches to ensuring that the patient is fully embedded in the ILAP process. And importantly, the opportunity for patients to perhaps discuss the design of the clinical trials and what might be the benefit to patients through that product once it's on the market. What does ILAP mean for the life sciences industry? So there's obviously this opportunity, we hope, for these platform discussions. So earlier engagement in the design of innovative clinical trials, driving those efficiencies and really focusing on the patient needs and potentially reducing clinical trial timelines. We want this early platform dialogue to really help us understand what evidence is required from both a regulatory and HTA perspective, and then this obviously helps the sponsor in terms of their planning. Does that data set mean that the medicines regulator can make a decision at a particular time point? And is that data set, that evidence that's been generated, is that also going to be suitable, importantly, for access? As I mentioned in the toolkit, there's the flexible and expedited regulatory routes, which can lead to earlier market access. And this earlier planning really is going to hopefully help to ensure that the evidence developed is going to potentially support managed access and the commercial decisions, with an opportunity to plan at a cross UK national level, with opportunities to also include NHS payers. And what does the ILAP mean for the MHRA, UK HTA agencies and the UK payers? I think what we found has been a fantastic opportunity during the first year of operation has been this opportunity to collaborate much more. We always worked with colleagues from our HTA bodies, but never to such a degree that we've worked during the ILAP. So we can collaborate, we can do our best to align. It helps us do our jobs better by facilitating safe and early and financially sustainable patient access to important medicines. So really clear goals from all of our organizations. It also helps us in terms of thinking about alignment of evidence generation. So when we have all of these discussions together, we can really understand better what each of us needs to be able to make the decisions that we have to do for the future. And also there's a key interest in real world evidence. So we have one of the tools of the toolkit, which is the continuous benefit risk tool integrating real world evidence. So really understanding, which parts of the development program have to be conducted with clinical trials, but perhaps which elements could be collected in the future post-authorization through real-world evidence collection. And a key component, and I think this is one of the first, is that we have this joint decision-making around the innovation passport. So we sit in the same room through what we call our innovation passport steering group, and we make a co-decision around whether that innovation passport designation should be given. This common and earlier understanding of the regulatory and access pathways increases the opportunity for alignment, and the timely engagement does really allow opportunities to create a much better commercial and managed access approaches where relevant and where needed. So my final slide in terms of just where we're going in the coming year. We're currently working on a new digital offer, which will hopefully have marked improvements in terms of those submitting the applications for the innovation passport and the target development profile. In relation to this, but also in our first year of operation, we've learned a huge amount and gained from experience of the applications and modified some of our processes and procedures. So there'll be additional guidance and further information updated on our webpage. We're going to develop some case studies with sponsors to really highlight the benefits of engaging with the ILAP, what we've learned, what have been the important approaches to delivering some of the benefits that I've highlighted in the previous slides. The new HTA Axis tool will be released in February, and there's the continuous developments and process improvements of the other tools. And there'll be further collaboration with other stakeholders in the UK life sciences ecosystem to derive this end-to-end approach with hopefully the possibility to help drive efficiencies also in clinical trial delivery. We also want to encourage developers of genomic medicines to enter the pathway, and this is clearly important for those many of those oncology products. And this is because many of these products also rely on in vitro diagnostic capabilities, so companion diagnostics are really important to ensure that we have co-development and co-discussions around the medicines development, but also the diagnostic component. How are we going to find these patients? How are we consistently going to consider the diagnostic requirements for understanding whether a patient should be given a particular medicine or not? And finally, we'll be building on the lessons learned for consideration of a medical devices pathway. Medical devices also offer huge benefits to patients. And so a similar pathway linked to some of the concepts of the ILAP is currently under active consideration. So I'd like to thank the organizers and yourselves for your listening, and I'll be happy to take any questions at the panel session. Thank you very much.